There are moments when the world is completely silent, yet the mind is unbearably loud. You might be sitting in a peaceful room, surrounded by stillness, but inside, a quiet storm is raging, made not of thunder or wind, but of thoughts that multiply and collide. Regret over what has already passed, worries about what is yet to arrive, scenarios that may never happen, conversations that were never spoken, questions with no answers, an endless carousel that spins long after your body has stopped moving. Overthinking is not always dramatic. It rarely arrives with noise or force. It is soft, creeping, almost invisible at first. It shows up in the pauses of your day, in the way you replay a sentence you said hours ago, in the way you plan outcomes you cannot control, in the way you lay awake at night, not because something is happening, but because the mind refuses to rest. It is a quiet exhaustion, not of the body, but of the heart. And if you have ever felt this invisible fatigue, you are far from alone. In our modern age, where life moves quickly and demands multiply, overthinking has become a silent epidemic of the mind. We live in a time of constant connection, yet we often feel deeply disconnected from others, from the present moment, and most of all, from ourselves. We don't always recognize overthinking immediately. Sometimes it hides behind productivity, perfectionism, care, responsibility, or preparation. We convince ourselves that we're just being thoughtful, cautious, aware. But when thinking stops being a tool and becomes a trap, we begin to lose the gentle rhythm of peace within us. The mind is a beautiful companion, but a restless master. Somewhere along the way, many of us began to believe that thinking more would give us more control, more protection, more certainty. But instead, it often creates more suffering. It drains our energy, blurs our clarity, and places us in battles that exist only inside our heads. Buddhist wisdom does not condemn the mind. It does not demand that we silence it by force. Instead, it gently teaches us how to understand it, how to relate to it, and how to let it rest. This is not about escaping life. It is about returning to it, fully, calmly, and consciously. In this journey together, we will explore how overthinking arises, why it persists, and how ancient Buddhist teachings can help us loosen its grip. You will not be asked to deny your thoughts or fight them. Instead, you will learn to meet them with softness, to see them clearly, and to let them move on without holding you hostage. Each insight you'll meet here is not presented as a rule, but as an invitation to pause, to breathe, to observe, to be kind to yourself in moments when your mind feels too heavy. Before we begin the teachings, let us take a slow, quiet step inward, toward understanding the subtle ways overthinking influences us. Overthinking is often misunderstood. It's not only about thinking too much, but thinking in a way that disconnects us from the present and traps us in loops that lead nowhere. It can disguise itself in many forms. Replaying the past. What if I had done it differently? Why did that happen? What did they really mean? Fear of the future. What if something goes wrong? What if I'm not ready? What if I fail? Self-judgment. Why am I like this? Why can't I stop thinking? What's wrong with me? Mental rehearsal. Planning, defending, anticipating, and fixing things that don't yet exist. Overthinking does not solve, it circulates. It can make you feel like you're doing something important, as though thinking longer is the same as understanding deeper. But in reality, it often becomes a spiral that leads only to fatigue and confusion. There is a quiet sadness in spending more time living in thoughts than in life itself. Buddhism recognizes this, not as a flaw of character, but as a natural habit of the untrained mind. The mind is not inherently peaceful or chaotic. Its nature reflects how we relate to it. And here is a beautiful truth. There is nothing wrong with you for overthinking. What you're experiencing is simply the mind trying to protect you, even if it doesn't always know how. With the right guidance, the same mind that once overwhelmed you can become the same mind that frees you, though thousands of years old. Buddhist teachings remain profoundly relevant, not because the world has stayed the same, but because the inner world of human beings has not changed as much as we think. Our surroundings are louder, faster, more stimulating, but the core struggles, fear, attachment, rumination, longing, are as ancient as breath. What Buddhist wisdom offers is not an escape from these experiences, but a way to walk through them with awareness instead of fear. This wisdom does not ask you to become someone else. It does not demand perfection. It begins exactly where you are, with the thoughts you carry, the emotions you hold, the pace you live. You do not need to retreat to a monastery or adopt a spiritual identity to understand the teachings. These principles were meant for everyday people with everyday minds, everyday fears, and everyday hopes. You can practice them in the silence of the morning, in the quiet moments before sleep, or even in the middle of a busy day when your breath becomes shallow and your mind begins to race. In the pages ahead, you will not be asked to abandon your humanity, but to embrace it with gentleness. This is not a journey of force. You will not fight your thoughts into silence. You will not rush yourself into peace. Instead, we will move with slowness and clarity, as though walking near a still lake at dawn. Each step will reveal something, not because we seek to control the mind, but because we finally learn how to listen to it without fear. Overthinking does not disappear all at once, it loosens, little by little, when we stop feeding it with resistance and start meeting it with understanding. In the chapters that follow, you will explore 6 gentle but powerful Buddhist teachings that can help untangle the knots in the mind and bring back a sense of inner stillness. But before we enter the first teaching, take one quiet breath, not to change anything, not to fix anything, just to arrive here, in this moment, fully. When you are ready, we will step into the first doorway. Before we begin exploring the first teaching, imagine this for a moment. You are holding a glass of water. It is not heavy at first. A few seconds pass, still. It feels light, but hold it for minutes, and the weight begins to build. Hold it for an hour, and your arm will start to ache. Not because the water became heavier, but because you never set it down. Overthinking works the same way. A single thought is not always a burden, but when the mind holds it, turning it, replaying it, resisting it, fearing it, the thought grows heavier. Not in truth, but in impact. The mind trembles under a weight it was never meant to carry without rest. There is a phrase in Buddhist teachings that says, "You cannot stop the waves, but you can learn to rest in the water." The purpose of wisdom is not to eliminate thoughts, but to change our relationship with them. The first step to reclaiming peace is not control, but presence. And that is where our journey into the first teaching begins. Teaching 1. The past has passed. The future is not yet here. The only door to peace is the present. There is a quiet kind of suffering that hides behind memory and imagination. The heart revisits moments that can no longer be changed, and the mind rehearses events that have not yet come to pass. Between the two, the present moment becomes a place we pass through, not a place we live in. But peace can only exist where life is happening, and life is always happening now. In Buddhist wisdom, the present moment is not a concept, it is a homecoming. The Buddha once said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." It is not a command, it is an invitation. You may notice how naturally the mind drifts backwards and forwards. It remembers conversations, mistakes, losses, and decisions that cannot be undone. It invents future outcomes, rehearses fears, plans defenses, or waits for something imagined to arrive. The mind does not do this to harm you, it does it to protect you, in the only way it knows. But the more it clings to what has ended, or reaches for what has not begun, the further it drifts from peace. There is a tenderness in memory. The mind holds on to moments because they shaped us, some with warmth, others with pain. But suffering begins when we try to re-enter a moment that no longer exists. Wishing it could be rewritten. Regret whispers, if only. Guilt says, I should have. Longing asks, why did it end this way? But the past is like a river that has already flowed downstream. No matter how vividly you remember its water, you cannot step into it again. Buddhist teachings do not ask you to forget your past. They simply remind you that the past does not need you to carry it to keep existing. It has already left its imprint. You are allowed to put it down. There is a story in many Buddhist traditions about two monks walking along a muddy road. They came across a woman struggling to cross a puddle. One monk lifted her gently and carried her across, then continued on his way. Hours later, the other monk said, I can't believe you carried her. We are not supposed to touch women. The first monk replied calmly, I put her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her? The past is only heavy when we refuse to let it rest. If the past pulls us behind, the future pulls us ahead, into places our feet have not yet touched. Worry often disguises itself as preparation, but beneath it lies fear. Fear of pain, fear of uncertainty, fear of not being enough, fear of loss. We imagine outcomes so vividly that the body begins to react as though they are happening now. The heart races, the breath shortens, the mind tightens around visions that exist only in possibility. Buddhist wisdom does not deny the future. It simply recognizes that the future cannot be lived before it arrives. The mind can visit tomorrow, but the body can only exist today. Peace is not found in pre-lived moments. When we stop traveling ahead of time, we stop suffering twice. Right now, as your eyes move across these words, you are living the only moment that exists. You are not in yesterday. You are not in tomorrow. You are here. This present moment does not need to be perfect for it to be peaceful. It only needs to be real. The present is quiet, not because nothing is happening, but because it does not demand anything from you except your presence. You do not need to solve the past. You do not need to predict the future. You only need to arrive where you already are. Try this. For just one breath. Do nothing but breathe. Do not force the breath. Do not lengthen it. Do not analyze it. Let it enter. Let it leave. In that one breath, you have arrived in a place the mind forgets to visit, the only place peace can live. When you begin to live from the present, something shifts gently within you. You realize that peace was never gone. It was simply overshadowed by noise from another time. Overthinking fades not because the mind is silenced, but because awareness grows. The present moment becomes a soft light, revealing that most of our suffering lies not in reality, but in memory and imagination. The Buddha did not teach presence as a discipline, but as a liberation. There is no need to force the mind to stay here. You only need to notice when it leaves, and invite it back with kindness. A question you can softly ask yourself throughout the day is, where is my mind right now? Not to judge the answer, not to correct it, simply to notice. Awareness itself is a return. In time, you will discover something life-changing. You do not need to chase peace. You only need to stop leaving it. There are people who believe that only when the future is fully calculated will they finally be at peace. They try to predict every possibility, every outcome, every worst-case scenario, as if preparation could shield them from all of life's uncertainties. But the more they prepare, the more uneasy they feel, the more they anticipate, the more it seems like they are racing against something invisible and unpredictable. Their mind never truly pauses to live, because it keeps wandering between assumptions that have not yet come to pass. Buddha taught that suffering does not come from events themselves, but from the way we think about them. When the mind clings to the past, we create our own chains. When it rushes into the future, we build our own prisons. Both are illusions, yet they hold great power over those who do not recognize them. Someone once asked, how can I live in the present when memories keep returning and worries constantly wait at the door? The answer is not to erase, but to be aware. Awareness is the key that unlocks the doorway back into the moment that is breathing right now. When a memory surfaces, you don't have to confront it or sink into it. Simply say quietly to yourself, "Oh, a memory is visiting." Then gently bring your attention back to your breath, to the sensation of your palm resting on the table, or to the sound unfolding around you. In that moment, the past no longer has the power to pull you away. When a worry about the future appears, you don't need to debate with it or analyze whether it is real. Just recognize, a thought about the future has arrived. Then return to the inhale and exhale. You don't run, and you don't follow. You simply be here. And in that simple being, thoughts dissolve, soft as morning mist under sunlight. Imagine a still pond. If you constantly stir the water because you want to see your reflection, the surface will remain full of ripples, and the image will become even more distorted. But if you stop, silence will naturally return, not because you force it to, but because nothing is disturbing it anymore. The mind is the same. Stillness does not come from control, but from releasing what agitates it. A Zen master once spoke of a man who complained that his mind was like wild horses, always running. He could not sit still, even for a minute, because thoughts kept dragging him into the past and propelling him into the future. The master only smiled and said, "The problem is not where the mind goes, but whether you know you are there with it." When we know, we are present. When we are present, the mind returns on its own. In everyday life, living in the present does not mean abandoning responsibilities or forgetting memories. It is the art of mindfulness, knowing what you are thinking, feeling, and where you are, without letting the mind take over the driver's seat. One gentle way to practice is to bring awareness to the smallest moments we often overlook. When you wash your hands, feel the coolness of the water running across your skin. When you walk, hear the sound of your feet touching the earth. When you pour tea, watch the rising steam drift like dissolving clouds. These moments are small, but they are doorways back to the present. Many people believe that the present is only worth living when everything is stable, when the work is done, finances are secure, family is harmonious, and there is nothing left to worry about. But the truth is, if the mind is not at peace, no matter how many changes occur outside, we will still feel lacking, anxious, and unsettled. On the other hand, if the mind is calm, then even when tomorrow is uncertain and yesterday still holds scars, life flows gently, like a river passing through each moment. Peace does not lie in time, it lies in presence. It is not about someday, but right now. There are people sitting in the middle of nature whose minds continue to run restlessly. And there are those in the heart of a crowded city who feel as peaceful as sitting among pine trees. It is not the scenery that determines the mind, it is the mind that determines how we experience the scenery. To return to this moment, you don't need to try too hard. You only need to see. See that you are breathing. See that you are listening. See a ray of sunlight resting on your hand. See the leaves whispering to each other beyond the window. Just see, without judging, comparing, or naming. Mindfulness always begins with a gentle seeing. One day, you will realize that the present is not a place you must find your way back to, but a place you have never truly left. It is only because of overthinking that you forget you are already here. And when the present moment rises within you, or rather, when you return to the present moment, your past will no longer be a haunting, and your future will no longer be a weight. They simply become different seasons of the mind, arriving and departing like clouds across the sky. Thoughts are like clouds. Let them pass without clinging. There is a quiet kind of suffering that lives not in events, but in the thoughts we wrap around them. Most people do not drown in reality. They drown in the stories the mind creates about reality. A single thought can become a storm, not because it is powerful by nature, but because we hold onto it as if it were absolute truth. Yet thoughts, in their essence, are no more solid than mist. Buddhist wisdom invites us to see thoughts the way we see clouds in the sky, fleeting, shifting, and without a home to stay in. A cloud does not ask for permission to appear, nor does it require effort to leave. It comes, it changes shape, it drifts on. The sky does not resist it, and it does not cling. The sky remains the sky, vast, spacious, undisturbed. Your mind, at its deepest level, is just like that sky. What disturbs us is not the appearance of thoughts, but the way we chase them, fear them, or identify with them. A thought arises, I'm not good enough. What if something goes wrong? They might judge me, I should have done better, and before we even notice what's happening, we are no longer observing the thought, we are living inside it. We don't see it as passing weather, we see it as who we are. But imagine for a moment, what if you didn't pick up every thought that passed through your awareness? What if you could simply notice a thought the way you notice a sound in the background, acknowledging its presence, but not merging with it? There is a softness in this way of seeing. No resistance, no suppression, no judgment, just space. And in that space, overthinking begins to loosen its grip. Consider sitting by a river. Leaves float along the water, each one unique in shape and color. If you tried to catch every leaf, you would not only exhaust yourself, you would miss the beauty of the river itself. But if you simply watched, you would see how gracefully each leaf completes its journey without your interference. Thoughts function in exactly the same way. They do not need your permission to arise, and they do not need your effort to disappear. They come, they go, you remain. The Buddha once said, with our thoughts, we create the world. This is not a call to control thinking, but to understand its nature. When you believe every thought is real, you build an inner world crowded with fears, doubts, assumptions, and imagined outcomes. But when you see thoughts as mere formations of the mind, temporary, shifting, and insubstantial, you begin to experience a gentle kind of freedom. There is a common misconception that the goal of spiritual practice is to stop thinking altogether. But thinking is not the enemy. Thought is simply a movement, like wind, like water, like sound. The suffering comes only when we cling, resist, or identify. If a bird flies across the sky does not try to catch it. If a cloud passes overhead, the sky does not try to push it away. The sky is vast enough to allow everything to appear and vanish without losing its nature. Likewise, your awareness is spacious enough to hold thoughts without being defined by them. Try this. The next time a heavy thought appears, perhaps one loaded with judgment, worry, or regret, pause for a moment. Don't react, don't follow, don't analyze. Simply notice. Give the thought a gentle label if that helps. Fear, planning, memory, self-criticism, expectation. Then allow it to pass through your awareness like a cloud passing across the face of the sky. Nothing to fix, nothing to fight, nothing to become. At first, the mind will want to cling. It has been trained to do so for years, perhaps decades. It will insist, this thought is important, this one matters, this one is different. But if you soften your gaze and simply rest in awareness, you will begin to see that every thought, no matter how loud, how familiar, or how convincing, eventually dissolves on its own. Some people fear that if they don't engage with every thought, they will become careless or irresponsible. But the opposite is true. Clarity does not come from overthinking. It comes from being able to see without distortion. When your mind is not knotted up in commentary, decisions become simpler, emotions become lighter, and presence becomes natural. There is a Zen story of a monk who was once asked how he deals with disturbing thoughts. He replied quietly, "I let them come, and I let them go. I do not invite them for tea." There is profound wisdom in that. You do not need to push thoughts away, nor do you need to serve them. Awareness itself is enough. One day, you will begin to notice something subtle yet powerful. The more you allow thoughts to pass on their own, the less they linger, the fewer they become, and the fewer they become, the more the mind reveals its original stillness, like a clear sky returning after the clouds move on. Some clouds are dark, some are bright, some are heavy with rain, and some are thin as breath, but no cloud ever becomes the sky, and no thought ever becomes you. When you begin to rest in that knowing, overthinking loses its foundation. What remains is space, soft, open, and deeply peaceful. Overthinking creates suffering. Let go of what you cannot control. There is a unique kind of exhaustion that does not come from physical labor, but from the weight of carrying 1,000 imagined scenarios in the mind. Overthinking is not simply thinking too much. It is the habit of trying to resolve what cannot be resolved, predict what cannot be known, and control what was never ours to control in the first place. At first glance, overthinking may seem like a form of responsibility, intelligence, or preparation, but beneath its surface lies a subtle fear, the fear of uncertainty, the fear of imperfection, the fear that without total control, something will fall apart. Yet life has never asked us to carry the world on our backs. It only invites us to walk with awareness, to act with sincerity, and to release the rest. Buddhist teachings remind us that suffering is not born from events themselves, but from the way we grasp at them. The mind says, I must fix this, I must predict that, I must make sure nothing goes wrong, and in those demands, tension takes root. A thought becomes a knot, a possibility becomes a burden, a moment becomes a battlefield. It is not the experience that weighs us down, but the resistance to letting things be as they are. Imagine standing by the ocean, trying to stop the waves with your hands. You could stand there all day, straining, pushing, bracing yourself against each surge, but not a single wave would obey you. The sea does not bend to human will, and neither does life. Yet we continue to wrestle with the tides of uncertainty, believing that if we try hard enough, think long enough, or worry deeply enough, we can force reality into our preferred shape. But the ocean has its own rhythm. The tide rises, the tide falls, the wind changes, the surface shifts, the world keeps moving whether we are tense or at peace. The only question is, will we move with it or fight against it? Buddha taught that the root of unnecessary suffering is attachment, especially the attachment to control. When we attempt to hold on to people, outcomes, or circumstances that are in constant motion, we end up bruising ourselves against what refuses to stay still. To cling is to suffer, to release is to breathe. Consider how much of our overthinking revolves around what might happen rather than what is happening. We replay conversations, anticipate conflicts, construct imaginary futures, and relive mistakes long after they have faded into time. The mind becomes a spinning wheel, turning stories into prisons. But ask yourself gently, what truly belongs to you? What is actually within your hands? What have you ever been able to control with absolute certainty? Not the weather, not other people, not the past, not the future, not the countless variables that shift like sand beneath our feet. The only thing you have ever had, truly, is your inner response to life as it unfolds. There is a quiet freedom in recognizing this. It does not make you passive, it makes you wise. Instead of scattering your energy trying to command the uncommandable, you begin to rest in what is real, here, now. Thich Nhat Hanh once shared a simple yet profound image. A person pushing a boulder uphill. Straining, sweating, struggling with every ounce of force, believing that the burden must be moved. Yet the boulder does not budge. It is not stubborn. It is simply not meant to be pushed. The effort is not noble. It is misplaced. The exhaustion is not necessary. It is self-created. His teaching was gentle. Why push what does not move? Let go, and the path will appear on its own. Letting go does not mean indifference. It means releasing the illusion that everything depends on your attention. It means trusting that life has its own intelligence, that outcomes are not solely shaped by willpower. And that peace does not arrive through force. The mind, however, is clever in its resistance. It whispers, "If I stop worrying, things will fall apart." But notice, has worry ever guaranteed safety? Has stress ever prevented the unknown from arriving? Has anxiety ever controlled what was uncontrollable? What overthinking truly controls is not the future, but your present, draining it of clarity, softness, and rest. You are not asked to abandon care or responsibility. You are only invited to see clearly. Your task is to act with sincerity, not to dictate every outcome. Do what you can with presence, and place the rest down gently, like a stone returned to the earth. There is a phrase in Buddhist practice, "Let go or be dragged." When we hold too tightly to what is outside our reach, we are not securing stability. We are being pulled along by fear. Letting go is not a loss of power, it is the recovery of peace. Overthinking begins to dissolve the moment you ask yourself one simple question: is this within my control? If the answer is yes, take a breath and act with calm intention. If the answer is no, bow inwardly and release the burden. And if you are unsure, pause, not to think more, but to soften more. Clarity often comes not from more analysis, but from quiet presence. You will begin to notice something slowly, gently, almost imperceptibly. When you stop fighting life, life becomes lighter. When you stop wrestling with uncertainty, space appears. When you stop trying to control what was never yours, your energy returns to what truly matters. Mindfulness as an anchor, returning to the breath to quiet the mind. There are moments when the mind feels like a room with too many doors open. Thoughts enter and exit without pause, memories, plans, worries, conversations that haven't happened yet, mistakes that no longer exist, hopes that have not taken shape. Each thought pulls at you like a voice calling from a different direction. You try to respond to them all, but the more you chase, the further you drift from yourself. Mindfulness is not about silencing the mind by force. It is not about escaping thoughts or emptying the head of noise. It is simply the art of coming home, gently, quietly, without judgment, to what is already here. And the simplest doorway home is the breath. The breath does not belong to the past or the future. It does not live in memory or imagination. It only exists now, in the living moment. When you return to your breath, you return to the present. When you rest in the present, the mind begins to soften, like dust settling after a long wind. Buddha once said, "When the mind is calm, the breath is calm. When the breath is calm, the mind is calm." Breath and awareness move together like two wings of the same bird. To follow the breath is to follow yourself back into stillness. You do not need special conditions to begin. You do not need silence, incense, or a quiet room. You only need one inhale, one exhale. The breath has been with you since the moment you arrived in this life, and it will stay until your final moment. It is the most faithful companion you will ever have. Try this. The next time you feel overwhelmed, do not ask the mind to stop thinking. Do not argue with your thoughts. Do not try to outrun your worries. Instead, pause, just for a moment, and feel the air enter your body. Notice the coolness as you breathe in. Feel the warmth as you breathe out. You are not trying to change anything. You are simply witnessing what is already happening. Perhaps you place a hand on your chest or your belly, not to control the breath but to feel it. Inhale, exhale, again and again. No strain, no expectation, no rush, like watching waves touch the shore and drift away. At first, the mind may continue to speak. That is natural. It has been talking for years without rest. Thoughts will arise, pull, and wander. But each time you notice that you've drifted, gently return, not with irritation but with kindness. The breath is always there waiting, patient and unchanged, like a friend who holds the door open until you come back inside. Some people think mindfulness is about doing something. In truth, It is more about allowing. You do not breathe mindfully to become someone else. You breathe to remember who you already are beneath the noise. Imagine holding a glass of muddy water. If you keep stirring it, the water never clears. But if you set it down gently and leave it undisturbed, the sediment begins to fall to the bottom. In time, clarity returns. The mind is the same. When you stop agitating it with resistance and reaction, stillness rises naturally. Mindfulness does not ask you to suppress thoughts, but to see them clearly without becoming entangled. You are not the storm. You are the sky that holds it. You are not the noise. You are the quiet awareness in which the noise appears and fades. Returning to the breath is a way of returning to that sky-like awareness. It does not eliminate thinking, it changes your relationship to it. Instead of drowning in thought, you begin to stand gently beside it. Instead of chasing every story the mind offers, you rest in something more stable, more real, more immediate. The breath is not just air. It is presence. It is life touching you from the inside. It is the meeting point between the body and the mind. When you breathe with awareness, you gather all the scattered pieces of yourself into a single, grounded moment. Even one mindful breath can create space around a heavy thought. Even 3 mindful breaths can soften anxiety. With 10, the world begins to feel quieter, not because it has changed, but because you have returned. Mindfulness can be practiced anywhere. While washing your hands, feel the temperature of the water instead of letting the mind wander into worry. While walking, notice the sensation of your feet touching the earth, rather than rushing ahead in thought. While drinking tea, feel the warmth in your hands, the rising steam, the gentle movement of your breath as you pause to sip. While sitting in a busy room, let the breath be a shelter that no noise can disturb. In these small moments, you are not escaping life. You are entering it more fully. Some people resist mindfulness because they think they must do it right or be constantly serene. But mindfulness is not performance. It is intimacy with the present. It is learning to be with yourself without running, fixing, or controlling. You do not need to transform your breath. You only need to notice it. You do not need to get rid of thoughts. You only need to stop clinging to them. In the beginning, the mind may feel like a restless stream. Do not be discouraged. Even the wildest river finds stillness when it reaches the lake. Each time you return to the breath, you are widening the lake within you. The point is not to master the present moment. The point is to inhabit it. The breath is your doorway, your compass, your homecoming. And slowly, without force, the mind discovers what it had forgotten. That peace was never somewhere else. It was beneath the noise, beneath the tension, beneath the endless commentary, waiting, like quiet ground beneath falling leaves. As you grow more familiar with returning to the breath, something subtle begins to shift. You realize that the mind doesn't need to be forced into calm. It only needs a place to rest. Overthinking loses its grip not because you fight it, but because you no longer feed it with resistance. Mindfulness is not a tool to escape discomfort. It is a way to walk through it with gentleness. When a difficult emotion rises, fear, sadness, restlessness, you do not need to push it away or cling to it. You greet it the way you would greet a visitor, with acknowledgement, not ownership. You can silently say, "I see you," and then breathe. In that breath, something beautiful happens. The emotion stops being a storm and becomes a passing cloud. You no longer confuse the weather of the mind with the vastness of who you are. Many teachers remind us that the breath is like an anchor in the ocean. The waves may rise and fall, but the anchor holds you steady. Thoughts may crash and swirl, but when you return to your breath, you return to yourself. You do not need long meditation sessions to experience this. Even a minute of mindful breathing can soften the sharp edges of anxiety. Even 5 breaths can create distance between you and the stories the mind recites. Try this simple practice whenever you feel caught in overthinking. Pause. Do not try to solve anything immediately. Inhale gently. Notice the air entering your body. Hold for a moment, not with strain, but with awareness. Exhale slowly. Let the breath leave without hurry. Repeat, not as a task, but as a return. With each breath, the mind slowly untangles, the noise loosens, the present moment opens like a window letting in quiet air. There is a teaching that says, the breath is the bridge which connects life to consciousness. And it is true. Through breath, you reunite your wandering attention with the aliveness of now. Through breath, you remember your place in the world, not lost in thought, but awake to the moment. Mindfulness is not about becoming empty, it is about becoming aware. It is the gentle art of observing without reacting. When practiced regularly, it transforms the landscape of your mind. You begin to notice the early signs of overthinking before it grows into a storm. You feel the tension in your chest before it becomes panic. You hear the rise of anxious stories before they turn into belief. And with each recognition, the breath guides you back to clarity. Over time, mindfulness stops being a practice you do. It becomes a way of being. You listen more deeply. You speak with more care. You walk more slowly. You taste your food. You look at the world instead of rushing through it. The breath doesn't erase life's challenges, but it gives you the strength and clarity to meet them without drowning in thought. It allows you to respond instead of react, to observe instead of absorb, to rest in awareness even when the world around you is noisy. In the end, mindfulness is not an escape from thinking. It is freedom from being ruled by it. And that freedom begins with one quiet breath. The freedom of simplicity, releasing the weight of unnecessary worries. Life often becomes heavy not because of what it truly contains, but because of what we pile on top of it. We carry expectations that do not belong to us, fears that haven't happened, comparisons that steal our strength, and worries that grow only because we keep feeding them. In this quiet teaching, Buddhism reminds us of something powerful. Peace is not found by adding more, it is found by needing less. Simplicity is not about having an empty life, it is about having a clear one. When the mind becomes cluttered, even the smallest task feels overwhelming. A single thought can spiral into a storm. A minor uncertainty becomes a mountain. We begin to analyze, anticipate, and overplan, not because problems are large, but because our inner space has become crowded. Buddhist wisdom teaches that many of our burdens are self-created. We complicate life not because complexity is necessary, but because the mind has forgotten how to rest in what is essential. There is a saying in Zen: when you let go of what is not needed, what is needed can finally breathe. Simplicity is not something you chase, it is something you return to. It is already within you, beneath the noise, beneath the layers of must, should, and what if. Think of a clear pool of water. When too many stones are thrown in, the surface breaks again and again. But when you stop tossing things into it, the ripples fade, and stillness returns on its own. The mind works the same way. It does not need more control, it needs fewer disturbances. Unnecessary worries often come from one of three habits: overanalyzing what might go wrong, comparing ourselves to others, trying to manage more than what belongs to us. Simplicity softens all three, not through force, but through gentle clarity. When you focus on only what is truly yours to carry, the rest stops weighing you down. You begin to ask different questions. Instead of, what more do I need to do? You ask, what can I let go of? Instead of, how do I make everything perfect? You ask, what is enough for this moment? Instead of, what will happen later? You ask, what is actually happening now? This shift is not about shrinking your life, it is about freeing it. Many Buddhist monks live with very few possessions, not because they reject the world, but because they understand a deep truth. The more you cling to, the more you fear losing, the more you accumulate, the more you must protect. Simplicity creates spaciousness in the mind, the heart, and daily life. You don't need to become a monk to live simply. You can begin gently. Clear one worry at a time. Release one expectation that exhausts you. Let go of one story your mind keeps repeating. Focus on one moment, instead of 10 imagined futures. Simplicity is not a lifestyle trend. It is a path back to inner stillness. There is a Zen teaching that says, when you walk, just walk. When you eat, just eat. It sounds almost too simple, yet it points to a profound truth. Most suffering comes from adding what is unnecessary to what is already enough. A cup of tea, when fully experienced, is complete, but the mind rarely allows completeness. It interrupts with thought, memory, comparison, or planning. A simple act becomes burden from within. To simplify is to return to presence. It is to recognize that peace often lives in small, uncluttered spaces, an uncluttered breath, an uncluttered room, an uncluttered thought. And simplicity does not take anything away from you. It removes what was never helping you in the first place. As you begin to release what is unnecessary, a quiet clarity returns. You realize that most of the mind's noise is not about the present. It is about imagined futures, unchangeable pasts, or expectations borrowed from others. Simplicity invites you to gently step out of that noise and return to what is real. One of the most peaceful truths in Buddhist wisdom is this: you do not need to solve everything. You only need to be with what is here. When you stop filling your life with excess worry, excess information, excess striving, you create room to breathe. You start to notice moments you used to overlook. The silence before the sun rises. The way light rests on a wall. The taste of a warm drink. The comfort of stillness. These moments were always there. They were not missing. You were. There is a Zen story of a student who came to his master and said, "My mind is full of confusion and tension. Teach me how to find peace." The master poured tea into the student's cup until it overflowed onto the table. Startled, the student said, "It's too full. No more can fit." The master smiled gently and replied, "Like this cup, your mind is too full. Until you empty it, there is no space for peace." Simplicity is this emptying, not of life, but of mental clutter. It does not demand that you throw away everything you own or abandon your responsibilities. It simply asks you to stop carrying what you don't need. Little by little, you begin to recognize the signs of unnecessary complexity. When the same thought repeats without offering clarity. When you feel anxious but can't name a real danger. When you say, yes, out of guilt instead of truth. When you plan for every scenario except the present one. When a decision becomes heavier than it needs to be. In those moments, ask gently, what is the simplest honest step right now? Not the perfect step, not the clever step, just the clear one. Simplicity brings you back to enough time, enough breath, enough clarity to handle this moment, not all moments at once. You begin to realize that life is rarely the burden. It is the extra layers we wrap around it that make it feel heavy. Worry is extra. Comparison is extra. Over-explanation is extra. Self-judgment is extra. Letting even one of these go lightens everything. There is a Japanese concept called shibumi, a quiet elegance born from simplicity. It is not loud. It is not showy. And it does not seek attention. It rests in naturalness and clarity. The same is true of inner peace. It grows not from having more, but from needing less. In a world that constantly urges you to add, to do more, achieve more, prove more, choosing simplicity becomes an act of quiet courage. And the beautiful thing is this: When the mind becomes lighter, overthinking loses its fuel. Worries no longer multiply in the shadows. The heart becomes spacious enough to hold peace without effort. Trust in impermanence. Nothing lasts forever, not even your struggles. There is a quiet truth at the heart of Buddhist wisdom. Everything changes. Nothing that arises stays forever, not joy, not pain, not thoughts, not worries. Yet much of our suffering comes from forgetting this truth and treating the temporary as permanent. Overthinking often lives in the fear that something difficult will last without end. We imagine being stuck in the same emotion, the same problem, the same uncertainty, as if time itself has stopped. But life is never frozen. Even when we feel trapped, change is already happening beneath the surface. Impermanence does not mean loss, it means movement. It means that the sadness you feel today will soften. The fear that surrounds you will shift. The confusion in your mind will eventually clear, like fog lifting from a valley. When the Buddha said, "All conditioned things are impermanent. Strive on with diligence," he was not offering a warning, he was offering freedom. Impermanence is the gentle reminder that you do not need to cling to what hurts, nor chase what has passed. It invites you to stand in the river of life instead of trying to hold the water still. Imagine a leaf floating down a stream. It does not resist. It does not try to hold onto the past bend in the river or speed ahead to the next. It simply moves with the current. The mind, when it stops clinging, can do the same. Nothing you are experiencing now, no matter how heavy, will stay fixed. Your worries will not remain unchanged. Even your thoughts are not permanent. They rise and fall like waves that never stay in the same shape twice. The problem is not that things change. The problem is that the mind tries to make them stay. When you cling to a painful thought, it lingers. When you cling to fear, it grows. When you cling to control, tension rises. But when you breathe and allow space, the natural movement of life continues its work. You do not need to force change. You only need to stop holding everything so tightly. There is a simple phrase that can soften the mind whenever overthinking appears. This, too, will pass. Not as resignation, but as remembrance, as clarity, as a way of loosening the inner fist that squeezes every moment as if it defines your forever. Look back at your life, at the emotions that once felt unbearable, the problems that seemed endless, the fears that shadowed your heart. Where are they now? They shifted, they faded, they became stories, teachings, or memories that no longer grip you. The same is true for what you carry now. Impermanence is not only the passing of pain, it is also the passing of uncertainty, the passing of noise, the passing of the thoughts that once felt too loud to ignore. When we learn to trust impermanence, we begin to relax into life rather than brace against it. We become more patient with our minds, more compassionate with our emotions, more gentle with our expectations of how things must unfold. And in that gentleness, overthinking no longer finds a place to root itself. When you begin to trust the changing nature of all things, something within you softens. You no longer cling to every thought as if it defines you. You no longer panic when discomfort arises, because you know it is only passing through, like weather moving across the sky. It does not belong to you, it only visits. There is an old Buddhist image of a traveler walking through a storm. The wind is harsh, the rain is cold, and the road feels endless. But instead of collapsing in despair, the traveler keeps walking. Not with fear, but with understanding. Why? Because they know the storm is not the sky. It will pass, and the sky will remain. Your struggles are storms, not the sky of your being. When you forget this, the mind begins to spin. It clings to every fear as though it were eternal. It creates stories about being trapped, broken, or powerless. But all of these stories are written in sand. and the tide of impermanence is already on its way. A beautiful way to remember this truth is through gentle noticing. That emotion you felt yesterday is not here in the same way today. The tension in your body shifts as you move, rest, or breathe. The person you were a year ago is not the person you are now. Even the thoughts you held 5 minutes ago have already dissolved. If everything is always changing, then no single moment can imprison you. One Buddhist monk once said, "The only thing permanent is the truth that nothing is permanent." Instead of fearing this, we can rest in it. Impermanence is not a threat, it is the very force that allows healing, growth, renewal, and release. Without impermanence, nothing could improve, no wound could close, no grief could soften, no confusion could turn into clarity. When you feel overwhelmed by your thoughts, try gently asking yourself, will this matter in a year? Will this feeling remain unchanged? Can I allow it to rise, stay for a while, and pass on its own? You do not need to push it away. You do not need to hold it close. You simply allow it to move with the flow of time. The art of peace is not to stop change, but to move with it. In moments of worry, take one breath and remember, you have already survived 100% of your hardest days. The pain that once weighed you down is not here in the same way. The storms you thought would break you became stepping stones. Overthinking loses its hold when you stop believing that every feeling, thought, or problem is final. Impermanence brings humility to joy, lightness to fear, and courage to the unknown. And the most beautiful gift it offers is this: you are not stuck, not now, not ever. Impermanence as quiet freedom. Impermanence is not here to take away your peace, it is here to return it. When you no longer expect life to stay the same, you stop resisting its movement. When you stop fearing that pain will last forever, you stop feeding it with thought. When you understand that every moment is already changing, you don't need to tighten your grip on it. What overthinking tries to do is freeze time, replay the past, predict the future, hold on to control. But the mind grows calmer when it learns to flow instead of hold. The river does not apologize for moving. The leaves do not cling to their branches when their season is over. A wave does not try to remain a wave, it rises, crests, and returns to the ocean. Your fears are waves. Your doubts are seasons. Your struggles are weather. Your thoughts are clouds. None of them stay. And when you stop treating them as permanent guests, they begin to leave more quietly. Impermanence is the space in which peace reappears. It is the reminder that no feeling is final, no situation is fixed, and no moment defines the whole journey. You do not need to force yourself into calmness. You only need to stop believing that what you feel right now is forever. Let this truth rest gently in you. The breath comes and goes. Emotions rise and pass. Thoughts appear and fade. Seasons change without your permission, and without your resistance. Even the mind that overthinks will, in time, quiet down, especially when you stop trying to make it permanent. Nothing you carry now will last untouched. Not your pain, not your restlessness, not even your uncertainty. All of it is already shifting, already softening, already on its way to becoming something else. And within that silent movement, there is hope, not the loud kind, but the calm kind, the kind that doesn't need promises, only trust. Trust in the gentle truth that what hurts will ease, what confuses will clear, and what overwhelms will eventually pass, because it always has, because it always will. 6 doorways to peace for an overthinking mind. Each teaching is not a separate piece of advice, but a doorway leading you back to the inner stillness that has always been there. When placed side by side, they form a quiet path, not rushed, not forced, just a simple return. 1. Live in the present, the only place the mind can rest. You don't need to fix the past or predict the future. Simply being here, in this moment, is enough to step out of the grip of constant thinking. The present is the only place where peace truly exists. 2. See thoughts like passing clouds, no clinging, no resisting. When you stop identifying with every thought, you stop drowning in them. The mind doesn't have to be empty, it just needs to be spacious. Clouds drift on their own if you don't try to hold them. 3. Let go of what you can't control, and suffering softens naturally. Overthinking often grows from the urge to control everything, but a mind that knows when to release regains clarity without struggle. Not everything is yours to carry. 4. Return to the breath, the anchor of awareness. The breath is not just a technique, it is a refuge. Each time you come back to it, a stream of thoughts quietly dissolves. Breathing in is returning. Breathing out is letting go. 5. Embrace simplicity, and the mind becomes naturally lighter. Much of our worry doesn't come from life itself, but from what we load onto it. Expectations, comparisons, overplanning, imagined pressure. Simplicity isn't about having less life, it's about having less mental clutter. 6. Trust impermanence. Nothing lasts forever, not even your struggles. No emotion stays, no worry is eternal. When you understand that everything is already changing, you no longer freeze in fear. You meet life with softness instead of resistance. A single thread through it all. Peace is not found outside. The Buddha's wisdom does not ask you to become someone else. It helps you remember what was always there. Your mind wasn't made to chase every thought. Your emotions weren't made to stay forever. Your struggles weren't made to trap you. Your breath wasn't made only to sustain life. It was made to bring you home. You do not need to apply all 6 teachings at once. One insight, arriving at the right moment, is enough to quiet the mind. Walk gently. Breathe slowly. Stay close to this moment. And let everything else, like water, find its own way.